Good. Hi, everybody. This is Walt Rakowich here. As many of you know, I'm the former Chief Executive Officer of my most favorite company, Prologis, and I'm also the author of the book Transfluence, which is a book really about the opportunity we all have to make a transformative influence in the lives of those that we lead and those that we serve. So I'm back again for another LinkedIn live chat with some of the most thoughtful voices guiding leaders to be more human and more effective. And I'm joined today by Brad Deutser. Brad is the founder and CEO of Deutser, an award-winning management consulting firm, and the Deutser Clarity Institute, a think tank, an idea accelerator, and an innovative learning center. He's helped individuals and organizations navigate through transition and through chaos. And we all know what the last 12 months has looked like. It's been a tough year. It's been chaotic. And so I, for one, am very eager to learn how leading what Brad calls clarity and why that's important. And he's also the author of a book called Leading Clarity, the breakthrough strategy to unleash people, profit, and performance. Brad, great to have you on.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to visit. Excited to learn from you as well.
We're excited to have you on. I have to just ask you just a quick question. I mean, this has been a chaotic year. Busier than most years for you? About the same? I mean, you know, given the situation, the COVID situation out there.
No, it's busier than any year than I ever remember. And it's interesting because at the beginning of the pandemic, I really sat at home in my home office and was really wondering, do we even have a business? Where is this going? Where is the world going? And I realized within about 2 weeks, 3 weeks into it, that people need help. People are searching for what is next and what's next after next. And it's created this really exciting but crazy exciting environment for people.
Yeah, no, it really has. I see it in the boards that I serve on, and just about everybody that I talk to. You've consulted numerous companies. I mean, in your book, I just can't believe the number of examples that you provide in your book, and I scratch my head as the number of companies and organizations, frankly, nonprofits, everything that you've dealt with. So let's just dig into this word clarity and the importance of it. What you mean by it and why it's so important to you as you consult with companies and people in all that you do.
Yeah, I think I think setting the framework for why clarity matters is important. Well, when you laid out what's happened, over the last year, and we talk about it from a standpoint of, a pandemic. We talk about the social upheaval, the political chaos. You talk about just change that's constant. People aren't really thinking about the changing American workforce also, where people were fully employed and now we have huge numbers of people out of work. So what we're talking about is a business environment that leaders are expected to operate in that is chaos. It's constant change. It's constantly navigating transitions. We're transitioning from here to here, from in office to out of office. So that's the environment. And, people want to label it good or bad. It is what it is. And it's not going to change. At the end of 2020, people are saying, I can't wait for the, 2021. I can't wait. And I kept looking, going, do you think that something magically is going to happen and erase something? No, we're going to continue in a similar environment, but it's how we navigate it. And so that's where clarity comes into play. And to us, clarity is a process that helps make sense of the chaos, change, the ambiguity that we're leading from. And when we think about the idea of clarity, I kind of break it down into this process that is thinking about it in a different framework. really looking at the organization from a different framework. Two, how do we humanize connections? And I know that's something you're super passionate about, the human part. Our whole business is about a human approach to organizational change. And then the third piece of it is this idea that positivity is the glue that binds the organization together, and it connects the organization from where it is to its desired future state. And so when we talk about clarity, we're really thinking about a framework, an organizational framework that is constructed by kind of those three broad areas.
You know, you talk about this being a process, and one of the things I found really interesting in your book, and I have to admit I kind of got sucked into it too, is this age-old thinking of outside the box thinking. Like, I as the leader have to be strategic, and so I got to think outside the box, quote unquote. And you say in your book that that actually a business has a much better chance of success if it strategically thinks inside the box, which is really, in other words, companies need to take into account real world limitations. You can't just wipe the slate clean and say it doesn't exist, so therefore let's think outside the box. No, that doesn't really work. And you actually metaphorically go through a box and you say there's 4 sides. Actually, there turns out to be 6 sides when you get into later chapters. But I think that's really interesting. Can you touch more about what you mean by that in terms of when you say process, that's the process?
Yeah. So the box, my whole career, I have thought of myself as this wild outside the box thinker, super creative. I've done crazy, crazy things. I've bubble wrapped ambulances for trade shows to, put a little sign on it saying, some people think we're obsessed with safety. We are. I've tried to hold press conferences on the middle of the busiest freeways in towns to stop traffic for showing people the importance of literacy and being able to read signs. I mean, I've done some really kind of crazy things that most people would say that's wildly outside the box. And I go back to my days working for Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus, where I'd stare at those rings, and that's where I first became obsessed with the idea that leaders and performers work within a prescribed environment. And so if I go back there and I think about focus and I think about creating those boundaries, for 20, almost 30 years, we've been researching this idea of where does performance come from? And so the idea for us really is that the box, and our research validates the idea that all organizations have a defined box. The problem is most organizations, most leaders don't take the time to think about their box. And most leaders think about it, oh, if I have a box, then it's limiting to me. Well, no, actually, it's really freeing to you. And so we define the box, the 4 sides of the box, as the direction side, as the operation side, the people side, and the engagement side. There are 4 sides to the 4 sides of the box. And what happens is when an organization defines its box, it gives leaders a place from which to lead. There's absolute clarity around this is where we are going, this is where we lead, and it gives people what they really want and what they need, and that's a place to belong. Most organizations don't define that place, and so employees don't feel as connected or as engaged because there is that lack of definition. And if you go back to childhood and you go back to, some of the early rules that we had, those early rules were about creating definition. Well, as humans, we work better when things are defined, when we know the limits. People tell me I'm not creative, but when I give them parameters to which to operate, all of a sudden, they're not worrying about being wildly creative. They can be appropriately creative within that framework. So it really is empowering, and it drives performance, it drives creativity, and inside the box drives innovation. And it's really counterintuitive, but it's what the research shows and what we found in hundreds of organizations around the country and world.
That's very, very interesting. And so one of the sides of the box, I'm interested in all the sides of the boxes, to be honest, but the one that I was really intrigued about was human capital, people. And I got to tell you, Brad, when I joined the workforce in 1979, which seems like a long time ago now, I mean, nobody was talking about people back then, right? It was a very transactional job, right? They hired me to do a job, and I did the job, and there were no chat rooms or any place where you could criticize management. Nobody cared. Now it's all about human capital. I was in a board meeting. I've been in board meetings, but in particular, one of the boards I'm on, we spend almost 25% of our time talking about people. It's amazing. And so, I guess I would ask you, what sorts of things do you think a leader needs to do to pay more attention to human capital? How do you advise your clients? And I know that's a big, we could be talking about hours of this, but if you just focus a little bit, what do you advise some of your clients to do?
Like the people part, and especially where we are today and how organizations, we can talk all we want about automating things and the technology and how technology is going to drive so many things, but people are still driving the technology. People are still interacting. People from this pandemic are going to be thirsting for more human interaction, not less. We are not staying where we are. We are seeing indications inside organizations, and we're seeing it outside organizations. The people part of business is going to grow in importance exponentially. This is not going to be an incremental, let's slowly get back. When we get back, it's going to be all in. And my advice to leaders is typically the same. Be human. Leaders have forgotten. We as leaders have so many things. We're worrying about tomorrow. We're worrying about how to pay this. We're worrying about the next client. We're worrying about all the things what is the next strategy? We're planning, we're thinking. But in so many instances, we see where the greatest organizations are the ones that are led by the most human leaders. And what I mean by that is those leaders who go out of their way to genuinely connect, to really be vulnerable, to be human. Where there's times where all organizations have challenges. The leaders that gloss over it and say, everything's great. The people know better. We don't give people enough credit. We label them, they're just our employees. That's just my management. Well, why are we labeling them? They're the same as we are. They're people. And when we think about the construct of our organization as a group of people who are united by this common cause of this, whatever this business is, that we share a sense of values, and together we can do something greater than any one or any small group of us. And you take that organizational framework forward and you begin to live that out. You see organizations that do great things. And so I always tell leaders, look, there's really simple things that you can do. Number one, think about being more human in how you write your memos and how you write your emails. All right? Really going to sound stupid, Walt, but one of my favorite things to do is write a memo to my mom. And tell her, and then get rid of mom at the top and look at how much more patient you are. Look at how much more human you are, more real you are, more vulnerable you are by just talking to a family member, talking to mom. I tell people, take an extra 15 seconds. Take an extra 15 seconds in every conversation. Well, I don't have time. Let me text you as quickly as I can. Let me just send this an email. Okay. But remember, when you and I are talking, that 15 seconds equates to 30 words, 35 words. It all of a sudden changes the college conversation with kids of fine, good, good enough, the quick things. And adding that 15 seconds, which we have the time, we can make that 15 seconds. Think about what fine goes to. It's fine. I'm really looking forward to talking more about it. Fine. I guess we can talk about it later. Totally different meanings, but that 15 seconds prescribes much more meaning and much more connection. We tell people when it comes to leaders, stop using the word why. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I know that Simon Sinek is brilliant beyond, he's a brilliant author. And why is a critical word. And I think that there is a critical place for the concept of why in organizations. But the word can be challenging, especially in today's organization. So if leaders eliminate the word why, Walt, why did you do this? Well, why did this happen? Well, why are our numbers the way they are? What happens? We're creating a disconnect. We're creating a human disconnect, and we're creating a conflict before we even get the answer. So if I say to you, Walt, help me understand. Let's talk about this. Can you explain? All of a sudden, I'm empowering you and creating that human connection. So anyway, when we talk about leading human, it really is about those connections that empower the leader in all of us to be our best.
And it's also about creating that awareness in a leader that he or she needs to always be, thinking and cognizant about the things that they say.
The things that we say, the things that we do matter. They matter how people hear you and how they feel you.
Yeah.
And in today's environment where we're disconnected overwhelmingly, people are ascribing their own feelings to things, and it's changing that dynamic.
Yep. Brad, you also mentioned in the beginning this word positivity. And I know you're chuckling here, but in your book you talk about the importance of positivity and optimism in leadership. You just said a minute ago, and you've said it in one of your articles that I read recently, positivity is the glue that binds us to what is important. In my book, I talk about the damage that fear can cause in a leader, which is really the opposite of positivity. And fear is one of what you call in the book, circuit breakers. I love that. That's a great analogy. And, your circuit breakers basically impede good leadership for everybody listening in. So can you speak more about this notion of positivity in one's leadership toolbox?
It's such a critical piece of the toolbox. We have just published a white paper on positivity, and it was really one of the more interesting things that I've been part of in my career, because I've always believed, and our work has shown, that there is a link between positivity and performance, individual performance, and now we've proven collective organizational performance. There is a link between positivity and what we call the positivity quotient and engagement inside an organization. And there is a link between internal net promoter score. There is a measurable, quantifiable link between positivity. Part of the challenge for leaders is that they think about positivity as being happy, that they think about positivity as, oh, I'm gonna cheer you on. And during the pandemic, you can't cheer. It's hard. It's hard to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to be upbeat and go, yeah, but you can still be positive. And so what we have worked to do is create a definition and a process to achieve positivity. And that definition of positivity, there's 5 elements that make up this positivity quotient that we measure in companies, that we give. There's a tool that we have that we have on our website that leaders are able to use every day. But it takes the 5 elements of positivity. Number 1, inspiration. 2, mindfulness. 3, happiness. 4, optimism. And 5, gratitude. Those 5 elements combine to create positivity. And what that does is it takes into consideration the fact that, no, I may not be happy today. I may have a tough day. But if I'm still inspired, or I still have a high optimism, or have a great high gratitude score, then I can still be positive without being happy, or I can be happy and not be one of the other. So it's constant calibration and giving leaders and organizations things to focus on. And what we've seen is that when you calibrate that and when you drive an organization with positivity, it is the great connector. Without positivity, you cannot achieve your desired future state. And so we see this in our research over and over, that those organizations with the highest positivity quotient are much more likely to achieve their desired future state. This is my strategic plan. This is my strategy. This is my vision. I'm more likely to achieve that with a highly positive organization. So to me, historically it's been, yeah, nice to have. So many leaders go, yeah, Brad, okay, that's one of those goofy, new age things. No, actually, it's one of the most important tools in your toolbox. And I will argue that it is one of the key drivers of culture, and it's one of the connectors between culture and your strategy and performance.
Boy, I could not agree with you more, Brad. You talk about this gratefulness as being one of the 5. And I have to admit, when I read your book, I thought, if I'm grateful for things, I can be positive. Do you find that leaders struggle with that? And when I say that, yeah, we're grateful, but we're really not. We're out there. It's a dog eat dog world, right? And we're competitive, but do you find leaders? Is it hard for leaders to be grateful? Truly look at their lives and say, "This is." I'm really excited about this in my life.
I think that leaders struggle with gratitude in some ways. And I'll give you an exercise in a minute that everybody can try. When we talk about being grateful, leaders typically will tell me, I'm grateful for my people, my management team, my board, my leaders. They give you the things closest to them that are the easy things that they're grateful for. And that's great, because we as leaders can't achieve without all the people who work with us. And so that gratitude is important. When I flip the question, Walt, and I ask the question to leaders, tell me what you're grateful for about you. Leaders look and they shake their head and they typically smile. And they can give me 1 or 2 or 3 things. I'm like, no, hold on a second. Here's what I want you to do with that. Every single day for the next month, I want you to write down 1 thing you're grateful for about you. Not your spouse, not your children, not your family, not your career, not anything. What are you grateful for about you as the leader of you as a person? And what makes it complicated here is, for 30 days, you can't repeat any of those things you're grateful for. And so it's fascinating. If I ask you to tell me what you're grateful for about your wife. Tell me what you're grateful for. I think you could sit here and go, well, I'm grateful for, and you go down the list, and that list is ongoing, and there's a natural flow to that list. But if I say, let's turn that inward, and you look at yourself and what you're grateful for about you, you'll give me 5 or 6 things, and you'll go, wait, this is a little bit hard. And the question is why? And most leaders say, well, because I've been trained to worry about the people and focus on the people who are around me. And my answer back is, you can't be a great leader if you don't focus on you, if you don't understand you, if you don't give yourself that grace and that understanding that you're expecting from everyone else, that cascades out.
Mm. That's very interesting. I wrote in my book it actually that it's not about you, but I think in some respects it kind of is. In other words, you have to know yourself. You have to
Yeah,
know yourself.
yeah, so I think as a leader, I think it is about being selfless. I think it is about giving. So I think in so many ways, what you write, I totally agree with. That doesn't mean, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree. It doesn't mean that you can't be self-reflective and to think about the things that make you you. Because
Yep.
as a leader, you're often, as I say, the stuffing of the Oreo cookie. You know, you're the stuffing. You're smashed between your employees on one side and your board on the other, or your employees and the customers. And so we're always being smashed and rubbed and moved. And so if there's not an understanding, if there's not a gratitude for you and what you bring, who's giving that to you? Your board once a year? Your manager once a year? Someone when they evaluate you and tell you you're doing a great job? You know, we work with so many different leaders, and I'm amazed. One of the highest performing leaders we work with has blown it. His company's performance is mind boggling. It's off the charts, and his boss, if you will, doesn't give him the congrats, doesn't give him the I want to tell you all the things you're doing well. It's let's talk about these things that I don't think you're doing well. Well, who's giving him, who's refueling his energy, who's repowering him. Sometimes it's self-fuel. We have to give it back to ourselves. And that's why I think this is so important.
Boy, I agree with you. That's powerful. Brad, you talk about the importance of alignment in an organization. In some things in your book, you talk about the misalignment between employees and management, the misalignment between boards and leadership, the misalignment between what's communicated and what's experienced, and your list goes on and on and on. There's a lot of people that don't feel like they're completely in control. They're not CEOs of companies. They can't hire Brad Deutser to come in and tell them what's going on because they look above themselves and they have a boss that they feel is not aligned with them, or they're not aligned with their boss, et cetera. So the difficulty is there's a lot of people that can't make the decision to make the change. What does someone do if they see misalignment in their organization, but they're not at the point where they can actually, make a difference themselves as a leader?
That can be tough. It's a tough place to be in. And I think we've all been there at some times in our career. I start with a simple belief that we sometimes live down to the titles that we have. Our company gives us titles. I'm an account manager. I'm a supervisor. I'm a frontline employee. I'm just in the warehouse. I'm a driver. I'm on a oiler. I mean, you name it. I'm a nurse. I'm a doctor. And we live up to those titles and we live down to those titles. And so the world around, you're the leader in your own world. The world around isn't different than the leader of your organization navigating chaos and navigating change. And sometimes the leader of the organization doesn't think that they have the ability to change because things are swirling so fast around them. And so that cascades through the organization. And so my first bit of advice is to tell people to get rid of the title, to stop thinking about yourself in the whatever title of your company, and to think of yourself as the leader of you. When we empower ourselves to see ourselves as the leader, without the self, well, I'm only the leader of this department. well, you're still the leader. You still have some measure of control. So it's first of all, it's how we see ourselves in the larger kind of construct of our organization. I am a person who believes that part of misalignment occurs because there's not 100% of the truth. And that we are operating, I see companies build strategies on 60, 70% of the truth. The majority of companies don't really want to have the hard conversation. They don't want to have the honest conversation. DEI is too hard to talk about. If I say something in a meeting, then I might be canceled. I might be this. We can't run our companies that way. It's lunacy. And so part of this empowering people is to really understand in a respectful way how to talk to the supervisor above or the group above, and framing things sometimes not as observations, but as questions. How can we? What can we? And I think there's incredible power in questions where you empower the person above you by simply, I'm thinking about this. Can you help me think about how do we do this? And so you become the smartest person in the room by not having to be the smartest person, but by simply asking the right question that then gets you to a little bit more of 100% of the truth, a little bit more of that alignment. There's sometimes that, that doesn't happen. And I tell people, be clear on what is expected of you and work to achieve those, live up to those expectations, and be aligned with yourself and your responsibilities. We sometimes get frustrated in organizations that, gosh, I can fix everything if they just let me. But that's not the way organizations are built. So maintain your focus, work for 100% of the truth, and be the best question asker that you can be.
I like that. See yourself as the leader of me. I love that. That's a great line. And stop thinking about my title.
Yeah, it's really so much of our work is centered on this concept right now in our institute, is helping people see themselves as the leader of them. It's the age-old question, are leaders born or developed? And my contention is that everyone is born to be a leader. Now, we all have the skill set to be the leader, but we have the skill set to be the leader of one, ourselves. And if we frame back and we go to that factory default setting, we're given the ability to lead ourselves. Now, where that manifests, how that expands, we evolve and we develop that. But we can all be the leader, and people, especially in these times, feel that's been taken away from them.
Mm-hmm. So let me, this has been great, Brad. I've really enjoyed this as I enjoyed your book. I do have one last question for you though. You talked about this whole notion of being grateful about you. What are you grateful? What are you most grateful for?
I'm grateful for life. I am grateful for, I feel like there's so many blessings in life that come to me every day. I'm grateful for the leaders I get to work with. I'm grateful for the ability to go into some of the most complex environments and getting to help. I mean, at the end of the day, I think I told you before, I always wish I was a better business person. I'm so grateful that I'm better at helping than I am on the other side. I love helping others, and so I think I'm grateful for just all the goodness that's out there, and I'm grateful for having a view that the world is good and that positivity is kind of underlies that, drives me, and of course my family.
Of course, as I am grateful for my family too. Hey, Brad, I just want to thank you for being on, and I'd really like to. First of all, if people wanted to learn more about you, your work, how does someone get a hold of you?
They can email me at bdeitzer at Deutser.com. That's BEUTSER, BDEUTSER at DEUTSER, or I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter at Brad Deutser. And I love to talk to people. I love to visit. I love to help. And so, however I can, reach out to me. I love to do it.
And Brad's got a really strong organization as well. And you guys can find me at waltrakowicz.com as well. I just like to thank everybody for tuning in. Brad, I'd like to thank you for joining me today. And look, everybody, keep an eye out for future live streams. And until then, I hope you find a way to make a positive influence on those around you each and every day. Thank you so much, everybody. Brad, thanks again. Appreciate it.